Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel, a place where curious minds can rest and drift gently into the mysteries of the past. Tonight, we journey into the heart of the ancient Maya, a world of stone pyramids rising from the jungle, cities hidden beneath the canopy, and skies charted with a precision that still astonishes us today. For centuries, the Maya measured time in endless cycles, carved their dynasties into stone, and wove stories of gods and heroes into the fabric of daily life. These are not tales told in haste, but gentle glimpses, calendars more intricate than empires, games played for both honor and survival, and sacred drinks of chocolate once reserved for nobles and gods. If you enjoy these quiet journeys into history, I invite you to like and subscribe, or share one of your favorite Mayan facts down in the comments. But for now, let the centuries drift away like the jungle mist, and allow the ancient world to carry you softly toward rest. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. The Maya built vast cities deep within the jungle. When explorers first stumbled upon the ruins of Mayan cities, they were astonished to find entire urban centers swallowed by trees and vines. These weren't small villages, but sprawling cities with plazas, temples, palaces, and ball courts. Tikal, for instance, may have supported tens of thousands of people at its height, hidden away in the Guatemalan rainforest. The jungle both protected and consumed them, leaving us with ghostly reminders of how resilient and resourceful the Maya were. To build in such an environment required planning, engineering, and a remarkable ability to adapt. Their cities weren't random collections of structures, they were carefully aligned with celestial events and constructed as reflections of their cosmology. Walking through the ruins today, one can almost feel the hum of an ancient city that lived and breathed beneath the trees, a civilization that defied the wilderness and made it their home. Their pyramids rose like artificial mountains of stone. The Maya saw mountains as sacred, places where the heavens and the earth came close together. In the flat lowlands of their homeland, there were no towering peaks, so they built their own. Their pyramids were not just monuments, but sacred mountains of stone, layered step upon step. Some reached heights of more than 200 feet, rising above the tree canopy to catch the first light of dawn. From their summits, priests observed the skies and performed rituals meant to ensure balance in the cosmos. Each pyramid was both practical and symbolic, a staircase of stone that connected the underworld, the earth, and the heavens. Many were painted in vivid colors, with plastered surfaces gleaming in the sun. To the Maya, these weren't ruins of gray stone as we see them now, but brilliant, living mountains of light and meaning that connected the people to the gods. They developed one of the most sophisticated calendars in history. The Maya thought of time not as a straight line, but as cycles that repeated endlessly. To track these cycles, they built calendars of astonishing complexity. They maintained several systems at once: a 260-day sacred calendar used for rituals, a 365-day solar calendar for agriculture, and the long count, which measured Great A, spans of thousands of years. These weren't mere records of days and months, they were reflections of cosmic order. Priests used them to predict the best times to plant, to wage war, or to conduct ceremonies. To us, the numbers might seem abstract, but to the Maya, they were alive with meaning. Time itself was a divine force, and to measure it was to participate in the eternal rhythm of creation and renewal. Their calendars endure as some of the most advanced ever created in the ancient world, a testament to their vision of eternity. The Maya created a fully written language with hundreds of glyphs. While many ancient peoples used symbols, the Maya developed one of the very few fully written languages of the Americas. Their system combined logogram signs representing whole words with syllabic symbols, much like how modern alphabets work. The result was a richly expressive language capable of recording anything from royal lineages to poems and myths. Scribes painted glyphs in bright colors on bark paper codices, carved them into stone monuments, and etched them onto ceramics. For centuries, the meaning of these glyphs was lost, and they were seen only as mysterious decorations. But modern scholars have deciphered much of the system, revealing voices that had been silent for over 1,000 years. Through their words, we now know the names of kings and queens, the stories of battles, and the rhythms of daily life. In every glyph, the Maya inscribed memory into eternity, ensuring their stories would not be forgotten. They tracked the cycles of Venus with astonishing precision. The Maya were keen observers of the night sky, and few celestial bodies fascinated them more than Venus. They tracked its movements with such care that their calculations were more accurate than those of many later civilizations. Venus was not just a bright light in the sky, it was a god, a sign of war and renewal, a force that influenced human destiny. Priests recorded its appearances in the Codices, noting the exact days it rose as the morning star or set as the evening star. These records guided political decisions, with wars sometimes timed to align with its cycle. To look at the Venus tables in the surviving Codices is to glimpse the intensity of their devotion to the stars, a devotion that blurred the line between astronomy and mythology. For the Maya, the heavens were alive, and Venus shone as one of its most powerful voices. Their ball game was both sacred ritual and deadly sport. Across the Maya world, all courts stretched like stone arenas, their sloping walls echoing with the sound of rubber balls striking stone. The game they played was unlike anything we know today, a mix of ritual, competition, and sacrifice. Players used only their hips, knees, and elbows to keep the heavy ball in motion, aiming to pass it through stone rings set high on the court walls. It was grueling, physically demanding, and deeply symbolic. The ball represented the movement of the sun and the struggle between life and death. At times, the outcome of the game was tied to fate itself, with captives or even players sacrificed in ceremonies that followed. To witness a Maya ball game was to see both sport and sacred drama unfold, a contest that reflected the eternal balance between darkness and light, and the unbreakable ties between the people and their gods. The Maya carved entire histories into stone monuments. In plazas and temples across their cities, the Maya raised towering stelae, great slabs of stone covered in intricate carvings. These monuments were more than works of art. They were the pages of history, set upright for all to see. Kings and queens had their victories, rituals, and lineages inscribed upon them, ensuring their deeds would echo across the centuries. The glyphs marched down the stone in carefully arranged rows, often accompanied by images of rulers in elaborate dress, towering in size and majesty. Some monuments recorded alliances and wars, others the passage of time through their calendars. To stand before one even today is to stand in the presence of a voice from over 1,000 years ago. These monuments transformed cities into open-air libraries of stone, each one preserving the memory of a people who carved their lives directly into the bones of the earth. They believed their kings were living intermediaries with the gods. To the Maya, kings were not merely rulers of flesh and blood, they were sacred figures, chosen to stand between their people and the divine. A king's role was not only to lead in war and governance, but to perform the rituals that maintained the balance of the cosmos. Through bloodletting, sacrifice, and communion with the gods, kings sustained the order of creation itself. Their power was displayed in elaborate ceremonies, where they donned feathered headdresses, jade ornaments, and masks that transformed them into embodiments of deities. The people saw them as bridges between worlds, capable of drawing down the power of the heavens into earthly life. This belief gave kings immense authority, but also immense responsibility. To fail in their sacred duty was to endanger their kingdom's harmony with the universe. In their rulers, the Maya saw not only leaders, but living conduits of divine will. Chocolate began as a sacred Mayan drink. Long before it became a sweet indulgence, chocolate was a bitter, frothy, sacred drink in the world of the Maya. They ground cacao beans into a paste, mixing it with water, chili, honey, or maize, and whisking it into foam. Served in painted cups, it was consumed by nobles and offered in rituals to the gods. Cacao beans themselves were so valued that they were used as currency, a measure of wealth and power. To drink chocolate was to partake in something divine, a substance that connected the human body to the sacred cycles of nature. The drink was believed to energize, to heal, and to bless. When Europeans first encountered it, they were bewildered by its intensity. But for the Maya, it was the taste of life and spirit itself. Every sip carried with it a link to their gods, their rulers, and the eternal flow of creation. Some of their cities thrived long before Rome reached its peak. When we think of ancient civilizations, we often imagine Greece and Rome towering at the center of history. But while Rome was still a growing republic, Maya cities had already flourished in the jungles of Central America. Great centers like El Mirador rose in the centuries before Christ, with pyramids that rival the size of Egypt's, though hidden by dense green forests. These early cities were hubs of trade, ritual, and political power, with populations numbering in the tens of thousands. Their achievements remind us that the story of civilization is not confined to a single corner of the world. While Rome shaped Europe, the Maya were building their own great traditions across the ocean, weaving art, astronomy, and ritual into a society whose grandeur would echo for millennia. Their cities stood as reminders that greatness takes many forms, often in places the outside world least expects. The Maya observed solar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. For the Maya, the sky was not only a canvas of stars, but a clockwork of divine events. Among the most awe-inspiring were solar eclipses, when the sun itself seemed to vanish. Maya astronomers studied the cycles of the heavens so closely that they could predict these rare moments with startling accuracy. To them, eclipses were not natural accidents. They were powerful omens, moments when the balance between light and darkness trembled. Priests prepared elaborate rituals to guide their people through these celestial disruptions, ensuring the order of the world was preserved. The ability to predict an eclipse reinforced the authority of rulers and priests, showing their connection to cosmic knowledge. Even today, when we read their calculations preserved in codices, we marvel at how this jungle civilization charted the movements of the universe with a precision that continues to astonish modern science. They built observatories to map the heavens. Rising above the plazas and courtyards of their cities, the Maya constructed buildings whose very stones were aligned with the stars. Some structures, such as El Caracol at Chichén Itzá, functioned as observatories, with windows and sightlines oriented to the movements of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon. These were not observatories in the modern sense, filled with instruments, but carefully designed architectural tools. By looking through the openings, Maya astronomers could track the positions of celestial bodies and record their cycles. To them, the sky was a living map, and understanding its rhythms was essential to maintaining harmony in their world. Observatories were both scientific and sacred, places where priests communed with the heavens and brought back knowledge that shaped rituals, harvests, and wars. In every stone corridor and carved stairway, the Maya inscribed their devotion to the stars and their belief in the cosmos as the ultimate guide. Their temples were aligned with celestial events. The Maya believed that human life and cosmic cycles were inseparably intertwined. This conviction found expression in their temples, many of which were carefully aligned to celestial events. At Chichén Itzá, the Pyramid of Kukulkan is perhaps the most famous example. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, shadows along the staircase create the illusion of a serpent slithering down the pyramid, a symbolic descent of the feathered serpent god. Elsewhere, temples faced the sunrise at solstices or aligned with the rising of Venus. These alignments were not accidental. They were the result of generations of astronomical observation and architectural mastery. To the Maya, each temple was not merely a structure of stone, but a dialogue with the heavens, a way of anchoring divine cycles into the very heart of their cities. In standing before these temples, one stands before a calendar carved into the earth itself. The Maya developed advanced mathematics, including the concept of zero. Among the greatest intellectual achievements of the Maya was their understanding of mathematics. Unlike many other civilizations of their time, they recognized and used the concept of zero, a breakthrough that allowed them to calculate with extraordinary flexibility. They represented numbers with dots and bars, and their system could elegantly express vast spans of time or intricate astronomical cycles. This wasn't math in isolation, it was woven into every aspect of their society. Calendars, architecture, rituals, and even the recording of history relied on it. Zero, that subtle symbol of nothingness, gave their calculations the ability to stretch across eternity. When European mathematicians were only beginning to grasp its importance, the Maya had already built it into the foundations of their thought. Their numbers weren't abstract, they were alive with cosmic meaning, reflecting a vision of the universe as cycles unfolding with perfect precision. Their number system was based on 20s instead of 10s. Where our modern system is built around 10s, the Maya developed a vigesimal system, a base of 20s. This might seem unusual, but it flowed naturally from the human body. 20 fingers and toes counted together, with dots for ones, bars for fives, and special glyphs for larger numbers. The Maya could write and manipulate quantities with elegance and efficiency. Their system made it possible to record enormous spans of time in their long count calendar, reaching far into the past and future. To us, it might seem complicated, but for the Maya, it was second nature, woven into rituals, astronomy, and trade. This unique mathematical worldview shaped how they measured and understood the cosmos. Their base 20 system stands as a reminder that mathematics is not fixed, but a language shaped by culture, vision, and the ways humans choose to count the world around them. Maya architects built corbelled arches without metal tools. In their great cities, the Maya created vaulted passageways and chambers that still stand after more than 1,000 years. But unlike the Romans with their true arches and iron tools, the Maya achieved this using only stone, patience, and ingenuity. They perfected the corbelled arch, stacking stones gradually closer together until they met at a peak, distributing the weight above. The result was doorways and corridors that opened into grand palaces and temples. Constructing these arches required remarkable precision, especially without metal chisels or beasts of burden to carry heavy loads. Every stone had to be shaped by hand and placed with care. Walking through one of these ancient corridors today, one feels the quiet strength of their design, an architecture born from persistence, vision, and the human will to carve order and beauty into the wilderness without the tools others considered essential. They engineered massive reservoirs to store water in dry seasons. The Maya lived in a landscape that alternated between heavy rains and long droughts. To thrive, they needed to control water. Their engineers responded with brilliance, creating massive reservoirs lined with clay and stone to hold precious rainwater. In cities like Tikal, these reservoirs were vast enough to sustain tens of thousands of people. Some were even built with filtration systems using sand and limestone to keep the water clean. These reservoirs weren't only practical, they were sacred, often tied to rituals that honored the gods of rain and fertility. The ability to store and manage water allowed their cities to flourish in places where survival would have seemed impossible. To see the remnants of these reservoirs today is to glimpse the heartbeat of Mayan cities, the hidden infrastructure that made possible the splendor of temples, palaces, and plazas rising above the jungle. Their cities were connected by raised stone highways. Stretching through forests and across wetlands, the Maya built raised causeways called Sakbayab white roads. Made of stone and plaster, these highways gleamed in the sun and connected temples, plazas, and even distant cities. Some stretched for miles, straight and unwavering across the landscape. They were more than practical paths. They were symbols of connection, uniting communities and kingdoms under shared networks of trade and ritual. At night, they would have glowed faintly under the moonlight, guiding travelers and pilgrims toward their destinations. These Sakbayab made it possible for goods, ideas, and people to flow across the Maya world, weaving together a civilization spread across jungles, mountains, and coasts. Even now, when seen from the air, traces of these ancient roads cut through the forest canopy, quiet reminders of how the Maya bound their world together with ribbons of white stone. The Maya cultivated maize as their most important crop. At the very heart of Mayan life was maize, or corn. It was not only food, but a sacred gift tied deeply to their mythology. In the Popol Vuh, the great creation story, humans were said to be formed from maize dough, their very flesh made of corn. Fields of maize sustained entire cities, providing tortillas, tamales, and drinks that nourished both body and spirit. Farmers used stone tools and fire to clear land, carefully timing planting and harvests with the cycles of the heavens. Rituals were performed to honor the maize gods, ensuring fertility of the fields. Without maize, the Maya could not have thrived, and in their eyes, to plant and harvest was not merely an agricultural act, but a sacred duty. To this day, maize remains central to the lives of millions of Maya descendants, carrying forward the same rhythms that sustained their ancestors. They domesticated cacao, chili, and squash long before Europe knew them. Long before these flavors reached Europe and became staples of kitchens around the world, the Maya had already cultivated them for centuries. Cacao became the source of sacred chocolate, chili peppers added fire to their meals, and squash provided nourishment alongside maize and beans. These plants were more than food. They were threads of culture and identity, woven into rituals and daily life. To taste a Mayan meal was to taste the land itself, enriched by generations of careful cultivation. When Europeans first encountered chocolate and chili, they marveled at their intensity, unaware that the Maya had already perfected their use in cuisine and ceremony. In this way, the legacy of the Maya extends even into the food we eat today, carried across oceans and centuries, reminding us that the flavors of our tables often have roots in the deep forests of the ancient past. The Maya practiced intricate weaving and vibrant textile dyeing. Among the Maya, weaving was not merely craft, but a sacred tradition, handed down through generations. Women, often from an early age, learned to use backstrap looms, tying one end around a tree or post and the other around their waist, creating cloth with patience and skill. The textiles they produced were alive with color reds from cochineal insects, blues from indigo, and yellows from plants and minerals. Patterns carried meaning, reflecting local identity, social rank, or symbolic ties to gods and myths. To wear certain designs was to tell a story about who you were and where you came from. These fabrics clothed kings in resplendent robes and wrapped everyday farmers in the comfort of tradition. Even today, Maya communities continue weaving with the same techniques, every thread linking the present to a lineage stretching back more than 1,000 years. They created exquisite jade masks and ornaments. For the Maya, jade was more precious than gold. Its deep green color symbolized life, fertility, and the sacred maize upon which existence depended. Artisans carved the stone into masks, beads, and figurines, shaping it with sand and water in long, painstaking processes. One of the most famous treasures is the funerary mask of King Tikal of Palenque, made of polished jade tiles fitted together like a mosaic, with eyes of shell and obsidian. Jade ornaments were worn by nobles during ceremonies, gleaming as symbols of status and power. To the Maya, these objects were not just adornments, but vessels of spirit and protection. Buried with the dead, jade was believed to carry souls safely into the afterlife. To hold a piece of Mayan jade today is to feel the weight of both artistry and reverence, a glimpse into a civilization that prized beauty as deeply as survival. Their kings wore towering feathered headdresses as symbols of power. Mayan rulers often appeared in public adorned in costumes that transformed them into living embodiments of gods. Chief among these were elaborate feathered headdresses, towering creations made from the brilliant plumes of birds like the sacred quetzal. Long emerald green tail feathers cascaded down the backs of kings, shimmering in the sunlight as they processed through plazas or stood before their people. These headdresses were not fashion but power made visible. They signified the ruler's role as mediator between the heavens and earth, echoing the plumage of divine beings. The rarity of quetzal feathers gathered from remote forests only heightened their value. To see a king crowned in feathers was to see a man transfigured into myth, a mortal body clothed in the radiance of the sacred. In the silent ruins today, it takes imagination to picture, but once, color and feathers filled those ancient courts with life. The Maya recorded dynastic successions in hieroglyphic stairways. In cities like Copan, history was literally written into the steps. The hieroglyphic stairway at Copan is the longest known inscription of the Maya, with over 1,000 glyphs carved into the risers of stone stairs. This grand staircase tells the story of kings, dynasties, and victories, transforming a flight of steps into a living book of power. To climb it in ancient times was to walk upon history itself, each step echoing with names and deeds of rulers who claimed divine right. Such inscriptions immortalized dynasties, ensuring their memory would never fade, even if the cities themselves were abandoned. To stand before it today is to see history engraved in stone, a testimony to the Maya obsession with recording time, lineage, and continuity. These stairways were more than architecture. They were monuments to the idea that memory itself could be carved into the very fabric of the earth. Some of their palaces had multiple stories and elaborate courtyards. The Maya were not only temple builders, but architects of lavish palaces that housed their ruling families. In cities like Palenque, the royal palace complex sprawled across terraces with multiple stories, wide halls, and courtyards designed for gatherings, ceremonies, and governance. These structures combined practicality with symbolism, placing rulers at the very heart of their cities. Some rooms contained carved stone thrones, where kings would preside over rituals or receive emissaries. Courtyards allowed processions and gatherings under the open sky, while elevated towers may have served as lookouts or observatories. The sheer scale and design of these palaces speak of a society that valued both grandeur and function. Unlike the pyramids, which were sacred and forbidding, The palaces were centers of daily power, places where rulers lived, strategized, and shaped the destinies of their people. Even in ruins, their walls whisper of voices once surrounded by splendor and command. The Maya played music with drums, flutes, and conch shells. In the plazas and temples of the Maya, music filled the air with rhythms both sacred and communal. Drums made of wood and stretched with animal hide echoed during rituals, while flutes carved from bone or clay released haunting melodies. Conch shells, blown like trumpets, produced deep, resonant calls that carried across the city. Music was inseparable from ceremony. It accompanied dances, sacrifices, and royal processions. The sound was not merely entertainment, but a form of communication with the gods, a way of guiding rituals into harmony with the cosmos. Painted murals depict musicians in elaborate costumes, performing in grand events that brought together entire communities. To hear Mayan music would have been to hear the pulse of their world, a blend of rhythm and reverence, where every note carried the weight of tradition and the hope of touching something beyond the human realm. They created painted codices filled with astronomical records. Among the Mayas' most precious creations were their codices books made from the inner bark of fig trees, coated in lime to create smooth surfaces for writing. Onto these pages, scribes painted glyphs and images in vivid colors, recording astronomical cycles, rituals, and myths. These codices were folding books, compact yet filled with generations of knowledge. They contained detailed observations of the planets, the movements of Venus and Mars, and complex calendrical calculations. Each book was both practical, guiding agricultural and ritual life, and spiritual, binding human existence to the order of the cosmos. To hold a codex was to hold centuries of accumulated wisdom, painted by hands that saw no boundary between science and the sacred. Their fragility means that only a handful survive, but those few offer priceless glimpses into the minds of the Maya and their unbroken dialogue with the stars. Only 4 Maya codices survive today. Of the countless codices the Maya once produced, only 4 are known to have survived the centuries: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. Each is a rare window into a lost world of knowledge, filled with glyphs, numbers, and images that record astronomical tables, rituals, and deities. The Dresden Codex, for example, contains remarkably accurate calculations of Venus's cycles, while the Madrid Codex reveals insights into divination and ceremonies. Their survival is miraculous, given the fragile materials and the destructive power of conquest and time. When we look upon them today, we are not just reading ancient texts, but holding the last fragile threads of a vast library once filled with painted books. They remind us of how much has been lost, and how precious each surviving page is a voice reaching across centuries, whispering fragments of wisdom that nearly vanished forever. The Spanish burned countless Mayan books during conquest. When Spanish missionaries arrived in the 16th century, they saw Mayan codices not as treasures of knowledge, but as threats to Christian order. In one infamous act, Bishop Diego de Landa ordered the burning of countless books in Yucatan, declaring them works of the devil. To the Maya, this was not only a destruction of objects, but a silencing of their ancestors, an erasure of memory carefully preserved for generations. Entire libraries, filled with astronomical tables, myths, histories, and rituals, vanished in fire. What remains are only a few codices, fragments compared to what once existed. The burning of these books is remembered as one of the greatest cultural losses in history. Yet even in destruction, the spirit of Mayan knowledge endured, preserved in oral traditions, stone carvings, and the resilience of descendants who carry their heritage forward into the present day. The Maya had a complex pantheon of gods tied to nature and time. The Maya saw the world as alive with divinity, each aspect of nature and time infused with gods and spirits. Their pantheon was vast and intricate, gods of the sun and moon, maize and rain, death and rebirth. Some were dual in nature, embodying both creation and destruction, while others shifted forms depending on the cycles of time. Deities like Itzamna, the creator, and Chok, the rain god, were central figures, but the pantheon stretched into hundreds of divine beings. These gods were not distant abstractions, but living presences woven into daily life. Every harvest, every storm, every shift of the heavens was a conversation with them. To honor and appease these gods, rituals were performed, temples raised, and offerings made. In their pantheon, the Maya expressed both awe and intimacy, seeing the universe itself as a web of divine forces shaping every breath of existence. They believed the cosmos was divided into 3 realms. For the Maya, the universe was layered like a sacred structure. At the top was the heavens, where the gods of creation and celestial bodies dwelled. The middle realm was the earthly plane, home to humans, animals, and plants. Beneath it lay the underworld, a shadowy place of trials, spirits, and transformation. These realms weren't separate but connected, flowing into each other through sacred sites, rituals, and cycles of time. Temples rose like mountains to link the earth with the heavens, while caves and cenotes opened as doorways to the depths below. Life itself was an interplay between these layers, each influencing the other. To walk through the world was to walk within this cosmic architecture, where every star in the sky and every stone underfoot belonged to a larger, sacred order. For the Maya, existence was not simple. It was a weaving of worlds. The Maya envisioned the world tree as the axis of existence. At the very center of their cosmos, the Maya imagined a great world tree. Its roots reached into the underworld, its trunk rose through the human realm, and its branches spread into the heavens. This tree, often depicted as a ceiba, was the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar binding the 3 realms together. In carvings and codices, the world tree appears adorned with birds, serpents, and celestial symbols, each element reflecting the union of nature and divinity. To the Maya, it was not an abstraction but a living presence, a reminder that the sacred and the ordinary were bound by the same trunk. Rituals and temples often symbolized this tree, anchoring their cities within the cosmic order. When they gazed upon an actual ceiba tree in the forest, towering above others, they saw not just wood and leaves but a mirror of the universe itself. Human sacrifice was performed to renew cosmic order. For the Maya, blood was the essence of life, a divine energy that bound humans and gods. To sustain the balance of the cosmos, sacrifices were sometimes required offerings of human life, meant to nourish the universe and keep the cycles turning. These rituals might occur at great festivals, the dedication of temples, or times of crisis. Victims were often captives of war, their deaths seen not as cruelty, but as a necessary act of renewal. Sacrifice was tied to creation myths, where the gods themselves had offered their blood to shape the world. In this sense, humans gave back what the gods had first given. While unsettling to modern eyes, for the Maya, these acts were sacred duties, woven into the very rhythm of existence. Through sacrifice, they believed they sustained harmony between the realms of earth, heaven, and the underworld. Cenotes' sacred sinkholes were used for offerings to the gods. The limestone plains of the Yucatan are dotted with natural sinkholes called cenotes, their waters stretching deep into the earth. To the Maya, these shimmering pools were sacred portals to the underworld, places where offerings could reach the gods. Archaeologists have found in their depths treasures of jade, pottery, and even human remains, gifts lowered or cast into the waters during rituals. The sacred cenote at Chichén Itzá is among the most famous, where ceremonies once honored Chok, the rain god, whose blessings sustained life. To approach a cenote was to approach the threshold of another world, its still waters reflecting both sky above and depths below. These places carried mystery and reverence, serving as both practical sources of fresh water and sacred entrances to the divine. Even today, cenotes inspire awe, their blue depths holding echoes of ancient prayers and offerings. The Maya believed caves were portals to the underworld. In the Maya imagination, caves were not empty hollows, but entrances to Xibalba, the shadowy underworld. Within their cool darkness, rituals were performed to commune with spirits, ancestors, and gods. Archaeologists have discovered offerings left deep inside, pottery, food, and even traces of incense smoke that lingered on the stone walls. Some caves stretch for miles, labyrinths echoing with the sound of dripping water, which the Maya interpreted as the voices of spirits. Kings and priests entered these spaces to perform ceremonies that linked their cities to the cosmic order. To step into a cave was to step into myth, to approach the place where heroes journeyed and gods watched. Even today, in regions once ruled by the Maya, caves retain a sacred aura, reminders of the belief that the earth itself holds gateways to realms unseen. Their underworld was called Xibalba, the place of fright. The Maya described the underworld as Xibalba, a realm filled with challenges, trials, and lords who tested the souls of the dead. Far from a simple place of punishment, Xibalba was a landscape of rivers, crossroads, and houses, filled with trials, darkness, cold, jaguars, and obsidian blades. It was both terrifying and transformative, a place where heroes could descend and emerge stronger. The name itself, Place of Fright, evokes the dread and awe with which it was regarded. Yet, it was also part of the eternal cycle death-feeding life, the underworld sustaining the balance of the cosmos. In myths like the Popol Vuh, journeys through Xibalba carried lessons about courage, sacrifice, and the eternal rhythm of rebirth. To the Maya, the underworld was not the end, but a necessary passage in the ongoing story of existence. The Popol Vuh preserves their great creation story. Among the surviving texts of Maya tradition, the Popol Vuh is the most celebrated, a compilation of myth and memory preserved by descendants in the highlands of Guatemala. It tells of the gods who shaped the world, first from mud, then from wood, and finally from maize, the sacred substance of life. It recounts the journeys of the hero twins, their trials in Xibalba, and their triumphs over the lords of the underworld. Written down in the colonial period, the Popol Vuh echoes with ancient voices, preserving stories once recited in plazas and temples. It is more than myth, it is a map of the Maya cosmos, explaining humanity's place within cycles of creation and destruction. To read it today is to listen across centuries, hearing the poetic rhythm of a people who saw in maize, in sacrifice, and in the stars the story of existence itself. The hero twins were central figures in Maya mythology. At the heart of the Popol Vuh of the hero twins were Nopu and Palenque, whose adventures embody the struggle between life and death. Born of miraculous circumstances, they descended into Xibalba to face the trials of the underworld. There they played the ball game against the lords of death, outwitted them with cunning, and ultimately triumphed, bringing balance to the cosmos. Their story was not just entertainment, but a sacred drama, teaching lessons of resilience, sacrifice, and renewal. The twins were associated with celestial cycles. their trials mirroring the journey of the sun and moon through darkness and light. In murals and carvings, they appear as youthful figures engaged in feats of magic and trickery. Their tale gave the Maya a model of courage in the face of fear, a reminder that even in the shadowy halls of Xibalba, light could emerge victorious. The Maya saw bloodletting rituals as feeding the gods. For the Maya, blood was the vital essence that linked humans to the divine. In ceremonies, nobles and rulers drew their own blood as offerings to the gods, piercing tongues, ears, or skin with obsidian blades or stingray spines. The pain was seen as sacred, a necessary sacrifice that allowed communication with the spiritual realm. The blood was sometimes collected on paper and then burned, the smoke rising as a bridge to the heavens. These acts were not marginal practices, but central to Maya ritual life, performed during major festivals, royal events, and dedications of temples. To offer blood was to sustain the gods, just as the gods had once given life to humanity. It was an exchange, a reciprocity that maintained cosmic balance. While unsettling today, these rituals were to the Maya expressions of devotion, binding their flesh to the eternal cycles of creation. Rulers pierced their tongues and ears to offer sacred blood. In the most solemn of ceremonies, Maya rulers demonstrated their devotion by offering their own blood. Using obsidian blades or stingray spines, they pierced their tongues or ears, drawing blood that was then offered on cloth or paper. The act was deeply symbolic. The tongue, source of speech, became a channel between human words and divine will. The pain endured was seen as proof of the ruler's dedication, a reminder that leadership was both privilege and sacrifice. In some depictions, the blood-soaked papers were burned, their smoke carrying prayers upward to the gods. These rituals reinforced the king's role as intermediary, someone whose very body connected the human world to the sacred. To the people, such acts were not displays of weakness, but demonstrations of strength, devotion, and the sacred responsibility of rulership in a cosmos where every drop of blood carried divine significance. The Maya believed ancestors could guide the living. For the Maya, the dead did not vanish into silence. Ancestors remained present, watching and guiding the lives of their descendants. Rulers often traced their legitimacy to powerful forebears, performing rituals that called upon ancestral spirits for strength and wisdom. Burials were sometimes placed beneath houses so that families lived literally above their lineage, close to the spirits who shaped their fate. In ceremonies, bloodletting or offerings could summon ancestors, bridging the gap between the living and the unseen. These beliefs reflected a world where time was cyclical and presence eternal, where past, present, and future interwove like threads of the same cloth. Even in death, the ancestors were guardians, ensuring continuity, identity, and balance. To the Maya, to remember the dead was not simply to honor them, but to live in constant conversation with those who had gone before. Some royal tombs were filled with jade, shells, and sacrificed attendants. The resting places of Maya kings were not simple graves but elaborate chambers designed to reflect their power in life and carry it into the afterlife. Tombs, such as that of Tikal the Great at Palenque, were lined with offerings of jade, carved shells, and painted ceramics. Some rulers were buried wearing intricate masks of jade mosaic, believed to protect and guide them on their journey beyond death. In certain cases, attendants or captives were sacrificed to accompany the ruler, ensuring they were not alone in the other world. These tombs were microcosms of the cosmos, filled with symbols of creation and renewal. To step into such a chamber today, as archaeologists have done, is to encounter both beauty and solemnity, the silence of centuries still wrapped around treasures left in devotion, intended to carry kings into eternity. Surrounded by splendor, The Maya used stingray spines and obsidian blades in rituals. For acts of bloodletting and sacrifice, the Maya did not use ordinary tools. They chose instruments imbued with danger and symbolism, stingray spines and blades of obsidian. Stingray spines, sharp and venomous, carried the aura of the sea's hidden perils, while obsidian, volcanic glass sharper than steel, glittered with otherworldly brilliance. When used to pierce skin, these tools added layers of meaning, pain, transformation, and contact with the divine. Obsidian especially held sacred value, as its shimmering edges seemed like fragments of night sky brought to earth. These implements were not hidden away, but often displayed in ceremonies, emphasizing the gravity of the act. To us, they may seem harsh, but to the Maya, they were vessels of connection tools that allowed mortals to cross the boundary between the human world and the cosmic forces sustaining it. They adorned themselves with elaborate body paint and tattoos. Maya identity was often written not only in glyphs and monuments, but on the skin itself. Body paint was used for ceremonies, warfare, and daily life, transforming individuals into living canvases. Red, black, and blue pigments, made from minerals and plants, were applied in intricate patterns. Tattoos added further layers, etched into the flesh as permanent symbols of status, devotion, or courage. Warriors marked their bodies to invoke protection and strength, while priests and nobles bore designs tied to gods and lineage. These adornments were not merely decoration, they were statements of belonging, visible affirmations of one's role within society and the cosmos. To see a Maya ceremony would have been to witness a pageant of color and symbol, bodies painted and tattooed as extensions of myth itself, carrying the sacred outward into every gesture and presence. Some Maya filed their teeth into decorative shapes. In the Maya world, beauty often carried a striking edge. Among nobles, teeth were sometimes filed into points or geometric patterns, transforming smiles into displays of status and refinement. This practice, carefully done with stone tools, was not considered disfigurement, but enhancement, a way of distinguishing the elite from the ordinary. The shaping of teeth was often accompanied by inlays of precious stones, creating mouths that gleamed with jade or turquoise. These modifications reflected a society where the body itself could be a canvas for art and identity. To bear decorated teeth was to mark oneself as refined, powerful, and in harmony with ideals of beauty shaped by culture and belief. Though startling to us today, these practices remind us of the extraordinary ways humans across time have reshaped themselves to reflect values, status, and visions of the sacred. They inlaid jade and turquoise into teeth as status symbols. Jade and turquoise were among the most valued materials in Maya society, associated with life, fertility, and divine energy. To carry them in one's body was the ultimate statement of wealth and sacred favor. Skilled artisans drilled tiny cavities into teeth, carefully embedding small pieces of polished stone. The result was a glittering smile that literally shone with symbols of power. Such inlays were not for everyone. They were privileges of nobles and elites, whose bodies themselves became displays of wealth and connection to the sacred. To us, it might seem extreme, but in Maya society, it was seen as beautiful, desirable, and awe-inspiring. These jeweled teeth spoke not only of wealth, but of the closeness of their bearers to divine favor, turning even the act of speaking or smiling into a reminder of cosmic and social power. Maya nobles reshaped infant skulls into elongated forms. From birth, identity in Maya society was sometimes shaped quite literally. Among the elite, infant skulls were gently bound with boards or cloth to produce elongated shapes as they grew. This was not done in secret, but celebrated as a marker of status, beauty, and distinction. The resulting profiles, with high, sloping foreheads, became symbols of nobility, setting rulers and aristocrats apart from commoners. To the Maya, such forms echoed the heads of maize, reinforcing the sacred link between humanity and the crop that sustained life. These modifications were permanent, lasting throughout a lifetime, a visible reminder of the bearer's elevated place in society. While it may seem alien to us today, to the Maya it was a form of artistry and devotion, reshaping the very body into a living symbol of culture, belief, and connection to the gods. The Maya were skilled astronomers and mathematicians. To stand beneath the Maya sky was to stand beneath a vast, living calendar. Their astronomers charted the paths of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy, blending observation with spiritual meaning. Their calculations were guided by a sophisticated mathematical system, one that included zero and allowed them to record immense spans of time. Temples and observatories became instruments of measurement, aligning architecture with celestial events. This union of science and spirituality shaped agriculture, warfare, and ritual. Their knowledge was inscribed into codices, stelae, and murals, embedding it into both stone and memory. For the Maya, astronomy was not separate from daily life, but its very rhythm, guiding when to plant, when to celebrate, and when to act. Their skill stands as one of the greatest intellectual achievements of the ancient world, bridging earth and sky in a harmony both practical and sacred. Their long count calendar could track thousands of years. Beyond the seasonal and ritual calendars, the Maya devised the long count, a system capable of recording vast cycles of time stretching thousands of years into the past and future. Using a vigesimal system of base 20 mathematics, they marked dates with extraordinary precision, allowing historians today to pinpoint the timing of events and monuments with stunning accuracy. For the Maya, this wasn't abstract. It was a vision of eternity, a framework that placed human life within cycles of creation and renewal that stretched far beyond a single lifetime or dynasty. The long count embodies the Maya fascination with cycles. Baktuns, katuns, and tuns measuring epochs, but echoed the eternal rhythms of the cosmos. In their carvings and codices, these dates anchor stories of kings, gods, and battles into the fabric of time itself. Through the long count, the Maya gave shape to infinity. They accurately predicted solar and lunar cycles. The Maya skywatchers, with no telescopes or modern tools, mapped the heavens with astonishing precision. They tracked the movements of the moon and sun, calculating eclipses, solstices, and lunar phases with accuracy that rivals our own. These cycles were not simply curiosities. They were woven into the heartbeat of society. Planting and harvest depended on them, as did rituals and festivals that synchronized with cosmic rhythms. To know the future path of the moon or the timing of an eclipse was to demonstrate mastery of the divine order, affirming the authority of priests and rulers. In their codices, we see these cycles recorded with methodical care, evidence of generations of observation. To lie beneath their star-filled sky was to see a universe alive with meaning, and to predict its patterns was to hold a fragment of eternity in human hands. The Maya used bark paper books to preserve knowledge. Long before paper reached Europe, the Maya were creating books from the bark of fig trees. Strips of inner bark were soaked, pounded, and coated with a thin layer of lime plaster to create smooth white surfaces. These sheets were folded accordion style, forming compact codices that could stretch open into long, continuous texts. Onto these pages, scribes painted in black and red, recording astronomical cycles, rituals, and myths in delicate glyphs and illustrations. These books were more than records. They were sacred vessels of knowledge, portable libraries that carried the wisdom of priests and astronomers. Fragile though they were, they survived centuries in the humid tropics until conquest and fire erased most of them. Today, only a handful remain, but each page offers a glimpse into the minds of the Maya, their way of binding memory, time, and divinity into the thin fabric of bark. Their murals depict rituals, battles, and courtly life in vivid color. On the walls of temples and palaces, the Maya painted vast murals alive with color. These were not static decorations, but windows into their world, scenes of rulers seated in grandeur, of warriors marching to battle, of nobles engaged in rituals beneath banners and torches. The pigments were made from minerals, plants, and insects, their reds, blues, and yellows still visible centuries later. In Bonampak, a set of murals captures an entire story: musicians playing, captives in anguish, and nobles in splendid garments. These images show us not just myth, but daily life, from feasting to warfare, from ceremony to celebration. The murals remind us that the Maya saw art as storytelling, as history preserved in color and form. To stand before them now is to feel the echo of voices, the rhythm of drums, and the presence of people who lived their lives in brilliant detail. The city of Tikal had towering temples that rose above the forest canopy. In the heart of Guatemala's rainforest lies Tikal, one of the greatest Maya cities. At its peak, it was home to tens of thousands, its plazas crowded with markets, ceremonies, and royal processions. Rising above it all were the towering temples, some more than 200 feet high, their staircases climbing skyward. From their summits, rulers and priests could gaze across the endless green sea of jungle, their cities like islands in a living ocean. The temples were not only symbols of power, but instruments of timekeeping, aligned to solstices and celestial events. Even in ruin, the silence of the forest presses close, broken only by the calls of howler monkeys and parrots, giving the place a timeless aura. To climb a temple at Tikal today is to stand where kings once stood, to look upon the same horizon, and to feel the enduring grandeur of the Maya world. Calakmul was once Tikal's greatest rival. Deep in the Mexican rainforest stands Calakmul, a city that rivaled Tikal in power and influence. Known as the Kingdom of the Snake, its rulers bore the serpent emblem and built alliances that stretched across the Maya world. For centuries, Calakmul and Tikal clashed in a rivalry of battles, politics, and prestige, their competition shaping the history of the classic Maya. At its height, Calakmul was vast, with hundreds of structures, 2 immense pyramids, and networks of sakbiab linking its plazas. Its rulers saw dominance not only through war but through diplomacy, binding other cities into its orbit. The rivalry between Calakmul and Tikal was one of balanced 2 great powers locked in a dance that echoed through centuries. Today, Calakmul remains quieter and less visited than Tikal, its ruins hidden beneath trees, but its story continues as one of ambition, rivalry, and the shifting tides of history. The city of Copon is famous for its hieroglyphic stairway. In the lush valley of Honduras lies Copon, a city renowned for its artistry and inscriptions. Its most famous monument is the hieroglyphic stairway, a grand flight of stone steps covered with more than 1,000 glyphs. This is the longest known inscription from the Maya world, a monumental record of dynasties, battles, and ceremonies. Each step tells part of the city's history, transforming an architectural feature into a chronicle of power. Nearby, intricately carved stelae depict rulers in elaborate regalia, their images rising like stone guardians over the plazas. Copon was a center of intellectual and artistic life, where scribes, sculptors, and architects pushed their crafts to astonishing heights. To climb the hieroglyphic stairway was to ascend not only into the temple, but into the flow of memory itself. stepping upon the names and deeds of kings whose voices still echo in stone. Palenque's Temple of the Inscriptions holds the tomb of King Tikal. In the city of Palenque, nestled in the Chiapas jungle, stands the Temple of the Inscriptions, a pyramid with walls covered in glyphs that record the history of its rulers. Beneath its stone stairways lies one of the most remarkable discoveries in Maya archaeology, the tomb of King Tikal the Great. When it was opened in the 20th century, archaeologists found his sarcophagus deep inside, adorned with carvings that tell of his journey into the underworld. The burial chamber held treasures, offerings, and symbols of cosmic order, sealing him into eternity. Above, the temple itself continues to tell his story in carved glyphs that span generations. This union of monument and tomb embodies the Maya vision of kingship rulers, not only of their people, but of time, memory, and the balance of the cosmos itself. In Palenque, Tikal's presence lingers in both stone and story. Pakal's jade death mask is one of the most iconic Maya artifacts. Among the treasures discovered in Tikal's tomb was his funerary mask, a mosaic of jade tiles fitted with extraordinary care. The green stone shimmered with symbolic meaning, the color of life, maize, and rebirth. The mask's eyes, crafted from shell and obsidian, gave it an uncanny vitality, as if the king still gazed beyond death. For the Maya, such masks were not mere adornments, but powerful conduits, ensuring safe passage into the afterlife and affirming the ruler's divine connection. Tikal's mask has become one of the most famous images of Maya civilization, a face preserved in stone and memory. To look upon it today is to see not just a king, but an entire worldview, a belief in the eternal cycles of death and renewal, in which rulers did not die, but became part of the cosmic order they once upheld. Chichén Itzá's Pyramid of Kukulkan casts a serpent shadow at the equinox. At the great city of Chichén Itzá, the Pyramid of Kukulkan, also called El Castillo, is both monument and cosmic calendar. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows along its staircase that appear as the body of a serpent slithering down the pyramid's side. At the base, a carved serpent head completes the illusion, making it seem as though the feathered serpent god Kukulkan has descended to the earth. This remarkable alignment demonstrates the Maya mastery of astronomy and architecture, fusing myth with stone. Thousands once gathered to witness the event, a ritual reaffirming the bond between heaven, earth, and the divine. Even today, crowds assemble to watch the serpent of light and shadow appear, a testament to the enduring genius of the Maya, who inscribed time and divinity into every corner of their sacred cities. Uxmal is renowned for its ornate Pux tile architecture. In the rolling hills of Yucatan lies Uxmal, a city celebrated for its artistry and elegance. Unlike the towering pyramids of Tikal or Calakmul, Uxmal's buildings reflect the Pux style, with smooth limestone walls and intricate decorative facades. Geometric patterns, masks of the rain god Chok, and serpentine motifs cover its temples and palaces, making the city a gallery of stone craftsmanship. The Pyramid of the Magician, with its rounded sides, dominates the skyline, while the governor's palace stretches across a broad terrace adorned with thousands of detailed carvings. Uxmal's artistry reveals a people who blended engineering with beauty, shaping stone into patterns that reflected both function and faith. To walk among its ruins is to feel surrounded by design that is both mathematical and mythic, a city where every facade was a prayer in stone, echoing the cycles of time and the gods of rain and creation. The Maya built cities with plazas, palaces, and bulkheads. Across the Maya world, cities were not haphazard collections of structures, but carefully planned landscapes. At their centers lay plazas, open spaces where markets bustled and ceremonies unfolded. Around them rose palaces for rulers, temples for gods, and ball courts where sacred games were played. These cities were built to embody order, with architecture aligned to celestial events and connected by causeways. Each city was both a place of governance and a stage for ritual, where daily life mingled with the sacred. To live in a Maya city was to live in a cosmos made stone, every street and building reflecting the rhythms of the heavens. Even in ruins, their layout remains clear, a testament to the vision of planners who saw cities not just as homes for people, but as reflections of the universe itself. Some Maya cities had populations in the tens of thousands. Far from being small or isolated, the great cities of the Maya world were vibrant urban centers, sometimes home to tens of thousands of people. Tikal, Calakmul, and Caracol may each have rivaled the size of medieval European cities, filled with sprawling plazas, towering temples, bustling markets, and carefully planned neighborhoods. These populations required sophisticated systems of farming, water management, and trade to sustain them, as food and resources flowed in from surrounding lands. Archaeologists believe the scale of these cities meant they could project influence across hundreds of miles, becoming capitals of entire regions. To imagine such a place is to picture not just ruins in the jungle, but a living metropolis, alive with voices, color, and movement. These cities remind us that the Maya were not a scattered people, but builders of complex open worlds that thrived in the heart of the rainforest. The Maya never used the wheel for transport despite its invention. The Maya understood the principle of the wheel. Small wheeled toys carved from clay prove that they knew how it worked. Yet in their daily lives, they never applied the wheel to transport. The reason was practical. Their landscape of jungles, swamps, and steep hills offered little ground for wheeled carts, and they had no beasts of burden like horses or oxen to pull them. Instead, goods were carried on human backs or transported along waterways. This absence of wheel-based transport did not limit their ingenuity. They compensated with raised causeways, canals, and sheer human effort. The contrast is striking. A people who could track the heavens with uncanny precision and carve vast stone cities still moved their world one load at a time. It serves as a reminder that invention alone is not enough. Environment and circumstance shape what technology becomes useful. They relied on human labor to move massive stones. The pyramids and temples of the Maya were feats of engineering, constructed without iron tools, draft animals, or wheels. Every stone block, some weighing tons, had to be quarried, shaped, and moved by human hands. Workers used ropes, wooden rollers in some cases, and sheer manpower to drag stones across distances. Building such structures required enormous organization, with teams of laborers, artisans, and overseers working in rhythm to raise temples step by step. While kings and priests took credit for these monuments, it was the labor of thousands that gave them form. These stones still stand today, weathered by time but defiant, reminders of human endurance. To walk among the ruins is to walk through the echoes of footsteps, the effort of countless lives, and the immense willpower of a society determined to bring their cosmic visions into towering reality. The Maya painted their buildings in bright red, blue, and yellow. The ruins we see today are bare stone, but in their time, Maya cities were alive with color. Temples and palaces were painted in vivid reds, deep blues, brilliant yellows, and dazzling whites. Plaster coatings created smooth surfaces that held mineral-based pigments, transforming stone into radiant canvases. Red, made from hematite and cinnabar, symbolized life and blood. Blue, created from a mixture of indigo and clay, carried sacred significance, often used in rituals and offerings. When sunlight struck these painted surfaces, entire cities glowed as if alive, dazzling those who approached. To the Maya, color was more than decoration. It was symbolic power, embedding meaning into the very walls of their world. Walking through a painted city would have been like walking inside a living myth, where every wall, every step, and every corner told stories in shades as rich as the jungle that surrounded them. Their cities were abandoned centuries before the Spanish arrived. When the Spanish marched into Central America in the 16th century, many of the great Maya cities had already been abandoned for centuries. The jungles had reclaimed Tikal, Calakmul, and countless others, leaving only silent temples hidden beneath layers of green. This abandonment did not mean the Maya disappeared, but that the centers of their power shifted, and great urban hubs fell silent. Archaeologists still debate the reasons: drought, warfare, resource exhaustion. But what is clear is that by the time Europeans arrived, they found not bustling capitals, but scattered communities living in the shadow of Femendi, forgotten monuments. To stand before these ruins now is to feel that absence, a reminder of how civilizations can rise, flourish, and then leave behind only whispers in stone. The Maya did not vanish, but their once great cities passed quietly into history before foreign eyes ever saw them. The classic Maya collapse remains one of history's great mysteries. Around the 9th century, many of the great Maya cities of the southern lowlands were abandoned. Temples were left unfinished, monuments ceased to be carved, and populations dwindled. This phenomenon, known as the classic Maya collapse, remains one of archaeology's enduring puzzles. Unlike some civilizations, the Maya did not fall to a single invader or sudden disaster. Instead, their decline seems to have been gradual, spread across decades, and varied from city to city. Some places thrived, while others crumbled. The reasons remain debated. Climate change, warfare, and political upheaval may have all played a role. What makes the mystery so haunting is that the Maya achieved such brilliance in science, art, and architecture only to see their great centers fade into silence. The collapse remains a lesson in the fragility of civilizations, even those that once seemed destined to endure forever. Drought may have played a role in their decline. One leading theory about the Maya collapse points to drought. Climate records preserved in cave stalactites and lake sediments suggest that the region suffered prolonged dry periods around the 9th century. For a society dependent on rainfall to fill reservoirs and nourish maize, such droughts would have been catastrophic. Crops may have failed, populations grown hungry, and rulers lost the authority to promise balance with the gods. Archaeologists have found evidence of shifting settlements and abandoned farmlands, signs of a people struggling against nature's limits. Drought alone may not explain the whole story, but combined with other stresses, it could have tipped the balance. The silence of abandoned temples may thus echo the silence of skies that once withheld their rain, a reminder that even the most advanced societies are bound to the rhythms of the natural world they inhabit. Warfare between rival kingdoms also strained their society. Maya history is filled with tales of rival kings locked in cycles of conflict. Cities like Tikal and Calakmul vied for dominance, their alliances and wars shaping centuries of politics. As populations grew and resources became strained, competition for land and power intensified. Stelae record victories and humiliations, captives displayed and sacrificed to mark triumph. Warfare placed immense burdens on cities, draining resources and spreading instability. Archaeological evidence suggests fortifications rose around cities during the later periods, signs of growing insecurity. When combined with drought, disease, or famine, constant warfare may have accelerated decline, weakening kingdoms from within. The story of the Maya reminds us that civilizations do not always collapse from outside invasion. Sometimes, the weight of internal conflict can be just as devastating, pulling down even the greatest centers of power into silence and ruin. Even after collapse, Maya culture survived in smaller communities. Though their great cities fell silent, the Maya themselves never disappeared. In villages and towns scattered across the Yucatan and the highlands of Guatemala, their traditions endured. Farmers continued to plant maize, weavers continued to craft intricate textiles, and rituals honoring gods and ancestors persisted in new forms. These smaller communities carried forward fragments of a vast heritage, preserving language, belief, and identity through centuries of change. When Europeans arrived, they encountered not a vanished people, but resilient descendants who adapted to new circumstances while holding fast to old ways. Today, millions still speak Mayan languages and practice traditions rooted in antiquity. The survival of the Maya in smaller communities shows us that collapse did not mean disappearance. It meant transformation, the shifting of a great civilization into quieter but enduring forms that continue to shape life in Central America. Millions of Maya descendants still live in Central America today. The Maya are not a lost people, but a living culture. Across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, millions of Maya descendants carry forward traditions, languages, and identities linked to their ancestors. More than 30 distinct Mayan languages are still spoken, and many communities continue to observe rituals tied to agriculture, the cosmos, and the cycles of time. Their vibrant textiles, markets, and festivals reflect centuries of resilience. While the ruins of cities like Tikal and Chichén Itzá stand as monuments to the past, the living Maya remind us that their story did not end in the 9th century or with the Spanish conquest. It continues today, written in everyday lives, in the weaving of cloth, in the planting of maize, and in the voices of children learning the words of their ancestors. The Maya endure, not as relics, but as people still shaping their own future. The Maya continue to speak dozens of related languages. Though their great cities fell long ago, the voices of the Maya still carry on in language. Today, more than 30 Mayan languages are spoken across Central America, from the highlands of Guatemala to the Yucatan Peninsula. Each carries echoes of the past, shaped by centuries yet still rooted in the same ancient tongue. These languages preserve not only words but ways of seeing the world, with terms for cycles of time, sacred rituals, and the natural landscape. For many Maya communities, speaking their language is a statement of identity and resilience, a link to ancestors who carved glyphs into stone. Hearing Mayan languages today is like hearing continuity itself, the unbroken thread of memory spoken aloud. It reminds us that the Maya are not gone. Their voices still rise in homes, markets, and ceremonies, carrying the heritage of one of the world's great civilizations. Some modern Maya communities still use ancient calendars. Centuries after the decline of their great cities, the rhythms of the Maya calendar still guide life for some communities. The sacred 260-day calendar, once used for rituals and divination, remains in practice among Maya daykeepers in Guatemala. Each day is associated with a particular energy, a spirit that influences events and choices. Ceremonies continue to mark these cycles, blending ancient tradition with modern life. Farmers still look to the calendar to guide planting and harvest, just as their ancestors did. This living practice shows us that the Maya did not only create monuments of stone, they created monuments of time, patterns of days and cycles that endure across generations. When we think of calendars, we often imagine simple tools of measurement. For the Maya, and for those who continue their traditions, the calendar is alive, a dialogue between human life and the eternal turning of the cosmos. Rituals tied to maize are still performed today. Maize was not just a crop to the ancient Maya, it was life itself, the substance from which humanity was formed in their creation story. That reverence continues in modern communities, where rituals still honor maize as sacred. Ceremonies mark planting and harvest with offerings of incense, prayers, and sometimes the first ears of corn given back to the earth in gratitude. These rituals echo the rhythms of ancestors, binding communities to the same cycle of fertility and renewal that sustained their cities centuries ago. To this day, maize remains central to the diet, appearing in tortillas, tamales, and countless other foods that nourish both body and spirit. In honoring maize, the Maya affirm their bond with land and cosmos, reminding us that some traditions are so deeply rooted they endure across the shifting currents of time, as steady as the growth of a stalk rising from the soil. Maya farmers developed intricate terraced fields. The Maya were masters of adapting agriculture to challenging environments. In the hills and highlands, they created terraces, stepped fields cut into slopes, reinforced with stone walls to hold soil and water. These terraces prevented erosion and allowed crops like maize and beans to grow where flat land was scarce. In the lowlands, other techniques were used: raised fields in wetlands, drainage canals, and even systems that captured seasonal floods for farming. Such ingenuity supported vast populations in landscapes where survival was far from easy. These fields were not just practical but tied to ritual, as planting and harvest were guided by the cycles of calendars and the favor of gods. Today, traces of these terraces still mark hillsides, silent reminders of farmers who reshaped the land itself. They show us that the Maya's greatness rested not only in their cities and temples, but also in the earth they cultivated. They grew cotton for textiles as well as food crops. While maize, beans, and squash fed the people, cotton clothed them. The Maya cultivated cotton alongside their staple crops, spinning its fibers into thread and weaving it into textiles. Cotton garments, dyed in brilliant colors and adorned with patterns, became essential not only for daily use but for status and trade. Nobles wore finely woven cotton robes, while ordinary people used simpler cloth, yet both shared in the importance of this versatile plant. Cotton textiles were prized in trade networks, carried across regions to exchange for obsidian, jade, and cacao. The cultivation of cotton demonstrates how the Maya balanced practical survival with artistry and commerce, transforming a plant into both necessity and luxury. In the surviving textiles of Maya descendants today, one can still see the echo of this ancient tradition, threads woven from fields planted centuries before, carrying forward the colors of a civilization. They harvested salt along coastal lagoons. Salt was a precious commodity in the Maya world, vital for preserving food, flavoring meals, and performing rituals. Along the coasts of Belize and the Yucatan, the Maya developed ingenious methods to harvest it. They evaporated seawater in clay pans or dug channels into lagoons, allowing the sun to draw out crystalline deposits. Salt cakes were then shaped and traded far inland, carried along causeways and rivers to cities deep in the jungle. This trade bound coastal and inland communities together, linking fishermen and salt workers to kings and priests hundreds of miles away. Salt was more than a seasoning. It was wealth, sustenance, and sacred material. In offerings, salt symbolized purity and preservation, echoing its role in daily life. Archaeological sites still reveal traces of salt works, quiet evidence of an industry that sustained both the body and the spirit of the Maya world. Maya trade routes stretched from the Gulf to the Pacific. The Maya lived in a world connected by movement and exchange. Their trade routes stretched across mountains, jungles, and coasts, binding together distant communities. Canoes plied the rivers and coasts, carrying salt, cacao, cotton, obsidian, and jade. On land, Sakbiab white stone causeways linked cities, while porters carried goods on their backs. Through these networks, not only objects but ideas and rituals spread, weaving a cultural fabric that tied together kingdoms and villages. The reach of Maya trade connected them to peoples as far north as central Mexico and as far south as Central America's isthmus. Each traded item carried meaning. Jade symbolized life, cacao embodied sacred power, obsidian gave the cutting edge of war and ceremony. In every marketplace, goods exchanged hands, but so too did stories and symbols. These roots remind us that the Maya were not isolated, but part of a vast, interconnected world. Obsidian was a prized material for tools and weapons. Sharp as steel, obsidian was the lifeblood of Maya tools and weaponry. Formed from volcanic glass, it could be flaked into blades finer than modern surgical steel. Obsidian was used for knives, arrowheads, and ritual implements, its glossy black surfaces gleaming in firelight. Beyond its practicality, obsidian carried symbolic weight. It was associated with night, with the underworld, and with the gods of sacrifice. Ritual bloodletting often used obsidian blades, giving the stone both sacred and fearful significance. Trade in obsidian connected Maya cities to distant volcanic regions, ensuring a steady flow of this vital resource. To hold a piece of obsidian is to hold both weapon and symbol, a fragment of fireborn earth that sustained daily survival while binding ritual to the cycles of death and renewal. Its sharp edge cut not only flesh and wood, but also the boundary between human and divine. Jade was more valuable than gold in Maya society, while later Europeans prized gold above all. The Maya held jade as the most precious of stones. Its vibrant green color symbolized life, fertility, and the sacred maize that nourished humanity. Jade was carved into beads, masks, figurines, and ornaments, each piece requiring immense labor to polish and shape without metal tools. Nobles wore jade as necklaces, earspools, and pendants, gleaming symbols of wealth and divine favor. Jade was also placed in tombs, ensuring safe passage for the dead. To the Maya, its value was not merely material but cosmic, a stone that embodied vitality and eternity. Its rarity and beauty made it more coveted than gold, which played little role in their world. Today, jade artifacts remain among the most iconic treasures of Maya civilization, their polished surfaces reflecting not just craftsmanship, but the values of a culture rooted in life's eternal green. The Maya traded cacao beans as currency. In the bustling marketplaces of Maya cities, goods exchanged hands not for coins, but for cacao beans. Small, portable, and highly valued, they served as currency for centuries. A handful of beans might buy food, cloth, or tools. Larger amounts could be used for tribute or dowries. Beyond trade, cacao held sacred significance, brewed into the ritual drink of nobles and gods. The dual role of cacao, both currency and sacred substance, gave it extraordinary power in Maya society. To carry a pouch of cacao beans was to carry both wealth and spirit, a tangible connection between daily survival and divine order. The use of cacao as money reminds us that value is never fixed but shaped by culture. For the Maya, the humble bean was transformed into the measure of exchange, binding economy, ritual, and sustenance into a single remarkable seed. They also used colorful feathers as symbols of wealth. In the Maya world, feathers were treasures as valuable as jade. Brilliant plumage was gathered from exotic birds and transformed into headdresses, cloaks, and fans. Each feather carried meaning. Red symbolized blood and sacrifice, blue linked to rain and divinity, and green embodied life and fertility. Feathers were lightweight yet powerful symbols of prestige, worn by nobles and rulers in ceremonies. Their rarity made them especially prized, as many came from distant regions and were obtained through trade or tribute. To see a Maya ruler adorned in a cascade of shimmering feathers was to witness wealth made visible, a living display of cosmic color. In rituals, feathers were also offered to the gods, carried upward by fire and smoke. To the Maya, feathers were more than decoration. They were fragments of the divine sky itself, woven into the fabric of human ceremony and power. The Quetzal bird was especially sacred and prized. Among all the birds of the forest, the Quetzal held the highest place in Maya reverence. Its emerald green feathers, long and flowing, shimmered like sunlight on leaves. Sacred to the god Quetzalcoatl in neighboring cultures, the Quetzal was also tied to the Maya vision of life, fertility, and freedom. Its feathers were so prized that only kings and high nobles were permitted to wear them. Importantly, the bird itself was never killed for its plumage. The feathers were carefully plucked, and the bird was released, a reflection of its sacred status. In the hands of artisans, Quetzal feathers were fashioned into headdresses that made rulers appear like gods descended to earth. To glimpse a Quetzal in the wild was to see beauty incarnate, a flash of green and red among the trees. For the Maya, this bird was not merely an animal, but a living embodiment of the divine. The Maya brewed chocolate with chili and honey. Chocolate began as a sacred bitter drink, but the Maya rarely consumed it plain. They mixed ground cacao with chili peppers for heat, honey for sweetness, or maize for substance, whisking it into a frothy brew. Served in painted cups, the foam was considered the most delightful part. This drink was reserved for nobles, priests, and rituals, a luxury as much spiritual as physical. To sip it was to taste a connection to the gods, a reminder of cacao's divine origins. The combination of bitterness, spice, and sweetness created flavors unlike anything in the modern world. Chocolate was not a comfort food, but a ritual substance, consumed in moments of ceremony and power. The image of a Maya king raising a cup of frothing cacao captures both refinement and reverence, a civilization that infused even its drinks with cosmic meaning and artistry. They fermented drinks from maize and fruits. Beyond chocolate, the Maya also enjoyed a variety of fermented beverages made from maize, honey, and fruits. One common drink was chicha, a mildly alcoholic brew created by fermenting maize. Honey, another sacred ingredient, was also used in meads, often reserved for ceremonies. Fermented drinks were not merely for pleasure, but carried ritual importance, consumed in festivals, feasts, and offerings. They brought communities together, shared among families and neighbors during celebrations. Some drinks were believed to carry spiritual potency, offering not just intoxication, but a way to commune with the divine. Archaeological evidence of large ceramic jars suggests these beverages were brewed in significant quantities, supporting entire gatherings. To imagine a Maya feast is to picture music, dance, and voices rising as cups of fermented maize and fruit were shared, a reminder that joy, ritual, and community were often poured from the same vessel. Maya healers used plants and herbs for medicine. The forests of the Maya world were filled with medicine. Healers, known as shamans or ajmen, learned which plants soothed fevers, healed wounds, or eased pain. Leaves, roots, and bark were prepared as teas, salves, or poultices, often combined with ritual prayers or offerings. Some remedies were practical, such as using aloe for burns or cacao for energy. Others blurred the line between medicine and spirituality, treating both body and soul. Knowledge of plants was passed down through generations, preserved as carefully as their calendars and glyphs. These healers were not only doctors but spiritual guides, mediating between human suffering and divine balance. To fall ill in the Maya world was not just a physical condition, but a disruption of harmony, requiring both herbs and ritual. Their medical traditions remind us that healing has always been both science and art, rooted in observation, reverence, and care. They understood the medicinal use of tobacco. Tobacco, sacred and powerful, was a plant of ritual, medicine, and vision among the Maya. It was smoked, chewed, or consumed in other ways to treat ailments, calm pain, and drive away illness. In ceremonies, tobacco smoke was offered to the gods, its curling trails carrying prayers to the sky. Shamans used it to enter altered states, seeking visions or communication with spirits. Medicinally, it was applied to wounds, parasites, and even used as an insect repellent. Though its effects could be harsh, the Maya understood tobacco's potency and treated it with respect. It was a plant of dual nature, both healing and dangerous, sacred and everyday. To the Maya, tobacco was not a casual indulgence, but a tool, one that connected body, spirit, and cosmos, its smoke rising like a bridge between the human world and the divine. The Maya used enemas in ritual and medicinal practices. Archaeologists studying Maya ceramics discovered depictions of rituals that seemed puzzling at first. Figures using tubes and gourds in what appeared to be enemas. Later, analysis confirmed that the Maya employed them in both medicine and ceremony. Liquids infused with alcohol, herbs, or other substances were administered rectally, a method that allowed for faster absorption. This practice could have been used for healing, cleansing, or inducing altered states during rituals. Far from being taboo, it was integrated into their medical and spiritual practices, another way the body became a vessel for transformation. The discovery startled modern scholars, but for the Maya, it was part of their pragmatic and mystical approach to health. They saw no clear line between body and cosmos, and every means of reaching balance was explored. Even such an unusual practice reflects their creativity and deep engagement with the mysteries of existence. They believed illness could be caused by imbalance with the gods. For the Maya, sickness was not only physical, but spiritual. A person might fall ill because they had angered a god, neglected an ancestor, or upset the balance of cosmic forces. Healers, therefore, treated both body and spirit, using herbs alongside prayers, offerings, and rituals to restore harmony. Divination was often employed, with shamans interpreting signs to determine the cause of illness. If it was spiritual in origin, ceremonies might involve incense, bloodletting, or symbolic acts to appease the gods. This worldview saw health as inseparable from the sacred order to heal, was to realign oneself with the universe. In many ways, this perspective shaped daily life, encouraging rituals and offerings not only in times of crisis, but as part of maintaining well-being. Illness was a reminder of connection, that every breath, every harvest, and every life was woven into the will of the divine. Maya warfare often involved capturing nobles for ransom or sacrifice. Warfare among the Maya was as much about prestige as conquest. Battles often focused on capturing high-ranking nobles, generals, or even rival kings, whose fates could decide the balance of power. These captives were paraded in ceremonies, displayed as symbols of victory, and sometimes sacrificed to the gods. To capture a noble was to capture honor, demonstrating strength not just on the battlefield, but in the cosmic order. This emphasis shaped tactics, with warriors seeking live captives rather than total destruction. Warfare thus became both practical and ritual, a contest that fed politics, religion, and mythology alike. The images carved into stelae and painted onto ceramics show bound captives kneeling before triumphant rulers. Their presence a reminder that victory meant more than land. It meant control of lives, destinies, and divine favor. For the Maya, war was theater as much as it was struggle. Some kings expanded their cities through conquest, while diplomacy and alliances bound much of the Maya world together. Warfare was a path to glory for ambitious kings. Victories brought prestige, tributes, and captives for sacrifice, all of which strengthened a ruler's position. Expanding cities like Karakol and Kalakmul drew power from conquest, establishing dominance over neighbors and forging far-reaching networks of control. Such campaigns were recorded in glyphs, boasting of victories and commemorating rival defeats. Yet expansion was rarely permanent. Rival cities often rose again, shifting the balance of power in cycles of triumph and loss. For kings, warfare was both opportunity and risk, a gamble that could secure their place in history or plunge their city into decline. The ruins left behind whisper of these ambitions, of rulers who sought to carve their names not only into stone, but into the very geography of the Maya world. Maya warriors carried spears, atlatls, and obsidian blades. On the battlefield, Maya warriors wielded weapons crafted from the resources of their land. Spears tipped with obsidian or flint delivered deadly strikes, while atlatls spear throwers gave extra force and range to their throws. Obsidian blades, sharper than steel, were used in close combat, capable of cutting with extraordinary precision. Bows and arrows played a role as well, though the spear remained central to their warfare. Warriors often painted their bodies, wore padded cotton armor, and adorned themselves with feathers, turning battle into both struggle and spectacle. These weapons were not just tools of war, but sacred instruments, carried in the service of gods and kings. Each strike, each capture, was tied to ritual and cosmic order. To imagine Maya warriors is to see both skill and symbolism fighters whose weapons cut not only through enemies, but through the very balance of their world. Their shields were decorated with animal imagery. Maya shields were more than protective gear. They were emblems of identity, painted and adorned with powerful imagery. Some bore the faces of jaguars, symbols of strength and ferocity. Others displayed serpents, birds, or divine motifs that linked warriors to gods and myths. Shields could be made of wood, leather, or woven materials, sometimes covered with feathers to add brilliance. Carrying such a shield was as much about spiritual power as physical defense, for the image it bore was believed to lend its qualities to the warrior. In this way, a shield was a guardian twice over. It blocked blows in battle and imbued the fighter with symbolic protection. To stand in formation, shields raised, was to stand not just as men, but as an army of living myths, their defenses echoing the sacred animals and spirits that guided their fight. War captives were sometimes forced to play the ball game before sacrifice. In the Maya world, the ball game was never only a sport. At times, it became the stage for ritual drama, where captured warriors or nobles were forced to play before their fate was sealed. The game itself, echoing cosmic battles of life and death, took on even greater significance when played by those destined for sacrifice. For spectators, it was not only a contest of skill, but a profound reminder of the cycle of mortality and renewal. The outcome mattered less than the act itself. The bull game became a final offering, a prelude to the passage from life into the realm of gods. These rituals tied warfare, sport, and sacrifice together, binding human struggle to cosmic meaning. To picture such a scene is to see a stadium where the line between play and destiny vanished, each strike of the ball echoing with the weight of eternity. The Maya depicted war and sacrifice on painted ceramics. Ceramic vessels, used in daily life and ritual, often carried scenes of remarkable complexity. Painted in vivid colors, they showed warriors marching, nobles captured, and sacrifices performed in solemn ceremony. These images reveal how deeply warfare and ritual were woven into Maya culture. Drinking chocolate from such a vessel meant drinking from a story, one that recalled victories, honored gods, or reinforced the power of rulers. Many ceramics were buried in tombs, carrying these narratives into the afterlife. To study them today is to peer into a gallery of moments frozen in time, painted by artists whose brushstrokes captured both beauty and violence. These ceramics remind us that art was not separate from life. It was a mirror of it, preserving the events and beliefs that defined an age. Each vessel is a voice, speaking softly across centuries of triumph, sacrifice, and faith. Many Maya cities had stelae recording great battles. Stelae, tall stone monuments carved with glyphs and images, stood proudly in the plazas of Maya cities. Many told the stories of kings and their victories in battle, ensuring their deeds would never be forgotten. Scenes show rulers towering over bound captives, their elaborate costumes contrasting with the defeated kneeling at their feet. Glyphs recorded dates, alliances, and the outcomes of wars, anchoring them within the eternal cycles of the calendar. To the people, these stelae were more than records, they were proof of power, reminders that their rulers held the favor of gods and ancestors. Each new monument joined a chorus of stone voices rising across the city, transforming plazas into open-air histories. Even now, the weathered glyphs can be traced by hand, connecting us to the moments when victories were first carved into stone, eternalized in the language of kings. They measured time in cycles called baktuns, katuns, and tons. The Maya did not count time in years as we do, but in cycles of extraordinary scope. A ton was roughly a year, a katun spanned 20 tons, and a baktun stretched across 400 tons. These units were building blocks of the long count calendar, allowing the Maya to place events in vast frameworks of time. To them, history was not linear but cyclical, with events recurring in patterns that echoed creation itself. Rulers often timed ceremonies to coincide with the ending of a katun or baktun, marking the turning of cosmic gears. These milestones gave life rhythm and meaning, connecting daily existence to eternity. To imagine time in such scales is to see history not as fleeting, but as infinite cycles, where each human life is but a thread in the endless weaving of the universe. The famous end date of 2012 came from the Maya calendar. In the modern world, the Maya calendar became famous for a misunderstood prophecy. The long count cycle, which began in 3114 BCE, reached the end of a baktun on December the 21st, 2012. Some interpreted this as a prediction of apocalypse, sparking books, films, and worldwide speculation. Yet for the Maya, the end of the baktun was not the end of the world, but the completion of a cycle and the beginning of another. It was a moment for renewal, reflection, and ceremony, a turning of the cosmic wheel. Just as the sun rises each day, so too did time continue beyond 2012. The fascination with this date shows the enduring allure of the Maya vision of time, where the cycles of creation and renewal stretch endlessly forward, reminding us that endings are simply transformations, thresholds to new beginnings. That date marked the end of a cycle, not the end of the world. When the 21st century world gazed anxiously at 2012, the Maya themselves offered a gentler vision. The long count calendar was never meant to predict destruction, but to measure the vast rhythm of existence. Just as seasons turn and days pass, so too did Baktun's end and begin again. For the Maya, December 2012 was no more ominous than the sunrise, a signal of continuation, not collapse. Ancient inscriptions mark the completion of cycles with celebration, not fear, reaffirming the cosmic balance. The misconception that it foretold doom reflects our modern anxieties more than their ancient wisdom. In truth, the Maya saw time as abundant, eternal, and renewing. The turning of a back ton was an invitation to honor what had passed and to welcome what was to come, a reminder that life moves always forward in patterns of infinite return. The Maya saw time as eternal cycles of creation and renewal. At the core of Maya thought was a vision of time unlike our own. They did not see history as a straight line, but as endless circles. Days, seasons, and cosmic ages repeated in great patterns, echoing the cycles of Maize, the stars, and the gods themselves. Each cycle carried both continuity and change, weaving old events into new forms. In this worldview, human lives were part of rhythms that stretched across centuries, linking ancestors and descendants in shared time. Rituals ensured that these cycles stayed in harmony, that endings were balanced by beginnings. It was a perspective that gave both comfort and responsibility. Comfort in knowing nothing ever truly ends, and responsibility in maintaining the balance that allowed renewal. For the Maya, time itself was sacred, the heartbeat of the universe, always pulsing forward, yet always circling back. Their legacy continues to shape the culture of Central America today. Though the classic Maya cities fell centuries ago, their legacy endures in ways both visible and subtle. Millions of Maya descendants still live in Central America, speaking ancestral languages, practicing rituals, and weaving patterns into textiles that echo ancient designs. Archaeological sites draw visitors from around the world, their temples and pyramids standing as reminders of ingenuity and faith. Foods like maize, cacao, and chili remained staples of daily life, carrying forward traditions rooted in antiquity. Festivals blend Christian and Maya practices, continuing the dialogue between past and present. Even the way time is marked in calendars and rituals carries echoes of their ancestors. The Maya are not relics, but a living people, their history still unfolding. Their story is one of endurance, transformation, and continuity, a civilization whose voice still whispers in stone, in language, and in the living hearts of their descendants. And so, our quiet journey through the world of the Maya drifts to a close. From the great pyramids rising above the jungle canopy, to the painted glyphs that carried memory across centuries, to the rhythms of maize and the cycles of stars, their civilization was both earthly and eternal. We have wandered through their cities, walked along their white stone roads, and paused before their temples aligned with the heavens. We've tasted the bitter froth of sacred chocolate, listened to the echoes of drums, and traced the turning of time through their calendars of infinite return. The Maya remind us that history is not only written in books, but carved in stone, spoken in language, and carried forward by those who live it still. As you rest now, let their legacy drift softly around you, the whisper of leaves in the rainforest, the shimmer of jade in torchlight, the quiet pulse of time itself, circling endlessly. If you enjoyed this gentle journey, I invite you to like and subscribe, or share a favorite fact in the comments below. There are many more stories waiting in the shadows of history, and I'd love to have you along for the next one. But for now, let your mind settle, let the centuries fall silent, and allow yourself to drift peacefully into sleep.